Hey everybody, it's Party Elite here with another episode of Total Breakdown. Orokabos leads the Norskans under the name Varrock Sar Fang today against the Empire, led by the power of God and anime. Make sure you check out Orokabos on YouTube by following the link in the description down below. We begin, of course, with talk of composition and deployment, and while things might seem fairly simple to begin with, there are some very clever decisions being made over here. So let's take a look at the Norskans first. They're being led by none other than Wulfric the Wanderer on horseback, tucked away in the trees over here, alongside a Shaman Sorcerer of Death, also on horseback. The front line consists of these alternating Marauders and Marauder Champions, and then either flank is capped off using these Marauder Spearmen. You can also see the rear flanks protected by these armored Skinwolves over here, as well as over here, and then we've got these Mist Stalkers in the center back over here. Fimir Warrior Regiment of Renown, they're able to stalk forward and provide a bit of a surprise factor to the Empire front lines. We also have these Norscan Warhounds tucked away in the trees over here, able to push forward and get some nice flanking maneuvers going as well, while all the way in the far corner over here, the Maws of Savagery, Armored Skinwolf Regiment of Renown, of course, able to Vanguard deploy, as you can see, are looking to push in and maybe shut down enemy artillery or range support as well. Now let's take a look at the Empire. They are being led by none other than Boris Todbringer up in the air over here, alongside his Bright Wizard also up in the air. The front line consists of 3 units of great swords. We've got these spearmen with shields on either flank, as well as in the rear we've got a pair of spearmen with shields protecting the center of handgunners, as well as these silver bullets, also able to stalk, so currently hidden. To the back as well, you can see we've got a pair of Knights of the Blazing Sun, one of them being tucked away in the trees over here. They are currently hidden, so they're a bit of a surprise factor as well. Now you'll notice there's a lot of fire, and in terms of the Bright Wizard as well, there's the ability to bring about Kindle Flame. We've also got the Flaming Sword, so a lot of magical damage and fire damage. A great thought against Norskans because they have typically regenerative units. They also have the ability to go, well, to start raging and get that physical resistance, so good picks going on from both sides of the field. Let's see how it all breaks down, though. As you can see already, Boris Todbringer perhaps contemplating pushing forward and scouting. That is not a bad idea at all. There's a huge little section of trees over here that's worth checking out in case there's something hiding over there. You can see the Norscan Warhounds have decided to pull off to the side. Boris continues to push forward, and unfortunately there's no airborne units from the Norskans to actually push forward and scout for them as well. So these Maws of Savagery on that far corner over there, as they push forward, are going to be greeted potentially by these Knights of the Blazing Sun should they choose to stay put. And you can see as Boris pushes forward, he's able to actually spot these Mist Stalkers over here, so they're no longer going to come in as a surprise. And they also see that Wulfric is in charge, and also spot the Shaman Sorcerer of Death, who was creeping out of the trees. And you can see Boris, I think, hoping to take care of that Shaman Sorcerer nice and early, so Wulfric decides to stay back alongside these armored Skinwolves. They are anti-large, of course, so Boris does have to stay up in the air, not really able to dive in on that Shaman. It's a little bit too risky, so stays in the air and potentially pulls back into safety as well. And you can see the Bright Wizard as well pulling back into safety, maybe looking for an opportunity to get some magic going nice and early. We have these Norscan Warhounds, meanwhile, pushing off to the side again. The only range units that the Norskans can see are these handgunners, so maybe hoping to find a gap and pushing towards these handgunners while the rest of these lines are closing forward. And you can see as well Boris has given up over here, decides to pull back into safety, maybe look for another opportunity to dive in, while over here these Maws of Savagery continue to push forward in towards these Knights of the Blazing Sun, completely unwittingly, of course. And finally the Norskans are able to spot the silver bullets, and the silver bullets need to get some shots in. There are some viable targets up front over here. You can see the Mist Stalkers, for example, are an ideal target to get shot down with those armor-piercing bullets of the handgunners, as well as these silver bullets. And in comes a little bit of magic to start things off. We've got the Flaming Sword of Ruin, of course, that brings in some fire damage, increases missile damage as well by 25%, and because of how Kindle Flame works right now, the Mist Stalkers are susceptible to fire damage. They get that fire weakness temporarily while Kindle Flame is active, and so they get focused down on as these front lines all collide. And you can see in the center over here, especially these Marauders very quickly falling apart, melting away. And to the left over here, you can see as well, we've got these Maws of Savagery diving in towards the Knights of the Blazing Sun. And take a look, the countercharge comes in beautifully, wonderfully timed there. I don't think the Maws of Savagery realized what they were getting into until it was just a little bit too late, and we get a little bit of magical support back here as well. The Cascading Fire Cloak gets activated, increasing melee defense and buffing armor-piercing damage by 20%, and once more bringing in Kindled Flame as well. Now, the Maws of Savagery are already susceptible to fire damage. They have regeneration, and of course, with the Kindle Flame coming in as well, that weakness to fire goes all the way up to 47%. So take a look at just how quickly these guys are melting away. That's the only way to describe it. They are absolutely falling apart. The Knights of the Blazing Sun have taken barely any damage, and we've got Wulfric the Wanderer pushing through that front line there, hoping to get in there and provide some support alongside these Marauder Spearmen over here, while to the right flank as well, you can see we've got these Marauders pushing forward, hoping to shut down perhaps these handgunners over here, or maybe chase down some of these spears, while these Marauder Spearmen as well, hoping to take this long way around and maybe take care of these Knights of the Blazing Sun and these Skin Wolves as well, looking for an opportunity to dive in and get involved. The front lines are very quickly falling apart for the Norskins, unfortunately, though, as you can see. And over here, we've got the Fate of Buna going down on the Silver Bullet. So again, magic coming in from both sides of the field, trying to get some damage in as quickly as possible. And in just a matter of mere seconds, the Maws of Savagery look like they're already about to give up, if not completely die off. But in goes Wulfric the Wanderer alongside these Marauder Spearmen, hoping to get some work done, while over here you can see the Skin Wolves are able to close the gap into the Silver Bullets and cause a fair bit of damage, while over here as well, you can see these Skin Wolves, again, looking at that gap. They're hoping to push into these handgunners and save these Miststalkers who are being focused in on quite wisely. Meanwhile, on this left flank over here, you can see Wulfric manages to get in and causes a tremendous amount of damage to these Knights of the Blazing Sun. Their health is already down to about 50%. In come the Marauder Spearmen as well, and so these Maws of Savagery are able to pull back into safety, while back on the right flank, you can see we've got these Skin Wolves pushing into those handgunners who are wisely pulling back, but unfortunately not quickly enough. In come those slam dunk looking hits, throwing these handgunners back, absolutely ripping them to shreds, these poor unfortunate souls. But these spearmen are right there and able to respond, but so too are the Knights of the Blazing Sun. And take a look at this as they come charging through. They come barreling into these Skin Wolves, and again, they do have regenerative capabilities, so they are susceptible to fire damage, and very quickly they start falling apart, absolutely melting away. Back here, though, you can see the Silver Bullets have completely given up on the fight. They are routing and pulling back into safety, while Boris Todbringer manages to dive in on the Skin Wolves. They do get the Scroll of Shielding upon them to keep them alive alongside the Spearmen over here. The Boris Todbringer is able to cause a lot of damage, but now Wulfric is pushing in towards Boris, because as you can see, he's been hit by the Hunter of Champions, hoping to keep him in place, while all the way on the right flank we have the Flaming Skull Head. Go ahead and name that spell, but you can see it pushing right through and causing a fair bit of damage over here. These Marauder Spearmen stand no chance. Kindle Flame, of course, is activated as well, so there's that fire weakness coming in too. The Marauder Spearmen drop to about 50%, less than 50% health, in fact. Their will to fight drops as well, and very quickly you can see the tide sort of turning on that right flank over there, while all the way back here at the same time you can see we've got these Skin Wolves giving up on the fight despite Scroll of Shielding. And even though Wulfric used his abilities to slow Boris down, he's able to get away, though these Knights of the Blazing Sun have a different story to tell. They are absolutely falling apart. They're not having a good time against Wulfric and these Marauder Spearmen over here, but the front lines, you can see, are doing terribly for the Norskins. In the center, the Miststalkers were able to push through alongside the Marauders, but on either flank you can see these Marauder Champions are just not having a good time against these leveled up greatswords. They're armor piercing and anti-infantry, so the Marauder Champions' armor means nothing, and they're very quickly falling apart, unfortunately. On the right flank, again, you can see further over here, the Spearmen are having a bit of a field day. I'd hate to call it that, but the Marauder Spearmen definitely are having a terrible time, as that Flaming Skull Head went through and absolutely devastated their ranks over there. Meanwhile, over here, you can see the Miststalkers are pushing in, and I think hoping to take care of some of these Spearmen with shields, perhaps, and you'll see these Knights of the Blazing Sun are actually able to push in as well and get a little bit of support going on over there, while to the right over here, again, these Marauder Spearmen just barely able to hold on to the fight over here. Good work over there to these Marauder Spearmen, just able to hang in there despite the situation, but the front lines, you can see, completely melting away for the Norskins over here. Those greatswords have performed admirably. Back here, meanwhile, you can see Wulfric is being hit by Boris Todbringer, a very risky move over there. Spirit Leech goes down on Boris Todbringer. I believe he was using Foe Seeker just moments ago to get some extra assistance and buff his vigor as well, and you can see Wulfric is actually having a terrible time. He got charged. He's taking a lot of damage, down to about 25% health. A terrible situation for him to be in, of course, but Spirit Leech is doing a fair bit of work as well, reducing Boris to about 50% health, and Wulfric is hoping to turn that tide as quickly as possible, of course, but he's taking a severe beating. In comes the Shaman Sorcerer as well, hoping to distract Boris, rather, I should say, while back here you can see the Silver Bullets again being hit by the Marauder Spearmen, again hoping to keep those Silver Bullets at bay. Over here, meanwhile, the Miststalkers push through, and now Boris is in a terrible situation. His morale is dropping. His health is down to about 25%, so a terrible spot, and you can see the Norscan Warhounds as well trying to close the gap over here. Boris Todbringer very low on health, very low on morale, begins to waver, begins to rout, in fact, and tries to get away, but Boris is going to be chased down by Wulfric the Wanderer, so a terrible spot for the Empire's forces over here as Wulfric causes a tremendous amount of damage. Boris actually decides to completely shatter and give up on the fight. In just a moment's time, you'll see there's the shatter, but he actually physically shatters as well, as Wulfric decides that he is not going to let Boris get away. down goes Boris, and down goes Empire leadership as well. A precarious situation for the Empire forces, of course, and you can see back here we actually have these silver bullets completely giving up on the fight. Wulfric the Wanderer just barely manages to survive, and over here as well you can see we've got a charge coming in from these skin wolves, even though most of them are being tied down by the Knights of the Blazing Sun over here. Some are able to push through and get into these handgunners, but you can see we have these spearmen turning around and trying to provide some support immediately, while Wulfric over here is trying to take care of the Bright Wizard. Pops the Hunter of Champions once more, hoping to take care of that magical support, because again, it is very deadly magic for the units that the Norscans have brought to the field today. So good call over there, diving to the Bright Wizard, but the Bright Wizard is going to try and get away despite that reduction of speed by 48%. And you can see again, by zooming back all the way, the Norscans have very little left on the field, and that explains the balance of power. That left flank for the Norscans dies off as well, while to the right flank over here you can see some of these spearmen with shields do give up on the fight ultimately, and ironically these Marauder spearmen have decided to stick around and fight for quite a bit longer than any of the other Marauders on the field. And over here you can see the Bright Wizard was able to take to the air as these spears decided to push in and cause a fair bit of damage to Wulfric the Wanderer as well as the Shaman Sorcerer of Death, but unfortunately the tide is turning over here as well, as the spearmen are not going to have a good time, fully surrounded by so many units. In come the Maws of Savagery as well, and the spearmen are very quickly giving up right now on the fight, while the Knights of the Blazing Sun over here as well, routing currently very close to the edge of the field as well, so they might completely leave the field, but there is this other unit of Knights of the Blazing Sun still active on the battlefield. We have over here these Norscan Warhounds just ping-ponging around, cleaning up whatever they can, taking care of these spearmen with shields right now, for example, and you can see these Miststalkers as well, sort of rallying there for a moment, but ultimately deciding to rout once more. And over here we have the Fate of Buna going down on the Knights of the Blazing Sun. Excellent target selection, a very deadly unit, these Knights of the Blazing Sun, as they have already proven in the past over the course of this battle. And over here you can see these great swords get charged by Wulfric as well as the Shaman Sorcerer, and right away these Knights of the Blazing Sun decide to push in and hope to take advantage of the situation. There are the Maws of Savagery over here. They are again susceptible to that fire damage. In comes those beautiful charges, in comes Kindle Flame as well, thanks to the cast of Cascading Fire Cloak atop these Knights of the Blazing Sun, helping their melee defense as well as their armor-piercing damage, of course, just again trying to reduce what the Norscans have brought to the field. Over here we have these Spearmen pushing in as well as these great swords over here as well. Of course, the Bright Wizard decides to stay in the air, not really wanting to dive in just yet at least, but maybe able to get a nice tactical rear charge somewhere. But you can see over here these Knights of the Blazing Sun actually decide to give up on the fight because of these Marauder Spearmen. So unfortunate situation there. The Knights of the Blazing Sun seem like they don't want to stick around. They decide to turn around and give up on the fight. They need to pull away into safety because the spears are still causing a fair bit of damage. And you can see in the center over here as well, we've got the Flaming Sword of Ruin going down, and that's a great time to cast the Flaming Sword of Ruin as well. Of course, it brings in not only fire damage and magical damage, it also increases weapon damage. And you can see at the same time we have all of these Marauders triggering their rage. Some of them are getting their physical resistance, as you can see over here with these Marauders. They're physically resistant, but the magical damage now being supplied by the Flaming Sword of Ruin is going to bypass that, of course, and we have these great swords pushing in with their anti-infantry capabilities as well. So these Marauders are very quick to fall apart. These spears as well, not really willing to stay, and Wulfric decides to pull back into safety and maybe live to die another day. Perhaps the balance of power is still very much in favor of the Empire, despite what the situation might look like. And you can see some of these Marauders willing to return, but some others willing to shatter more or less immediately, despite rallying just moments ago. And over here again, you can see the Bright Wizard being chased down, Hunter of Champions being put down, but unfortunately is still able to take to the air, despite the Norscan Warhounds trying to take care of the Bright Wizard. And you can see here we have another cast of Sea Fang. We've missed a couple of previous casts, but unfortunately none of them have been all that ideal. Sea Fang has got maybe a handful of kills. As you can see, Wulfric the Wanderer has only 59, 60 or so kills over the course of the entire battle. So despite the brutal capabilities of Sea Fang, it just hasn't been pulling the work, and that's because of the disparate lines that the Empire has provided over the course of this battle. But this situation was a nice time to cast it. These great swords were all clumped up, so it did manage to get a little bit of damage done there. And now Wulfric and all these Warhounds decide to push in for some beautiful rear charges. Take a look at that micromanagement there, curving these Warhounds off to the side there ever so slightly, and then pushing in for a rear charge moments after Wulfric the Wanderer does so. So in come those rear charges, and take a look at these great swords. They are very quickly falling apart, literally and metaphorically speaking. They're taking a lot of damage. Their morale is dropping. These spears over here as well, very quick to give up on the fight. Great rear charge there by the Norscan Warhounds, but take a look at this response. The Bright Wizard decides to dive in as well, gets a beautiful charge in there, and the Norscan Warhounds now very quick to give up on the fight. They're actually wavering, about to rout. There's the rout, completely giving up on the fight over there, and these Marauder Spearmen as well, unfortunately, just as they get their physical resistance, decide to completely rout as well, and the Knights of the Blazing Sun now turn around. Wulfric decides to charge in to intercept and eats a fair bit of a beating over there. The Bright Wizard manages to get into the air, and now you can see all of these Marauder Spears, or rather these Spearmen of the Empire, the Great Swords as well, turning around and diving in on Wulfric. He is very low on health, very low on morale, decides to pull away and just barely manages to get away using Foe Seeker for that extra speed. The Shaman Sorcerer as well in a dangerous situation over here. We've got the Bright Wizard chasing after the Shaman Sorcerer, trying to get some charges in there, and he is very close to giving up on the fight, but Wulfric turns around and closes the gap over there, chases the Bright Wizard away, and they are now able to both pull back into safety, the Shaman Sorcerer as well as Wulfric over here using Foe Seeker still to get away from this clump. And you can see all the way back here, we kind of have these Norskans forming up once more, getting ready for one final engagement, perhaps one final hurrah. We've got this line forming up over here, and these Skin Wolves over here off to the side, hoping perhaps to get a straight head-on engagement, and they get a flanking maneuver in, perhaps get that extra morale damage and change the tide of the battle. But you can see the Bright Wizard, of course, very threateningly in the air over here, looking for an opportunity to dive in on either Wulfric or the Shaman Sorcerer over here. A nice charge could eliminate one of these units, maybe even charge into one of these regular units on the field over here, and you can see the spears hoping to take the brunt of these charges as they come through. Their higher melee defense will hopefully hold the lines. We've got these Norscan Warhounds pushing off to the side over here. At the same time, the Bright Wizard decides to dive into the Shaman Sorcerer of Death, trying to avoid that magical support that the Norskans might bring in, and you can see Wulfric decides to push in there and try to take care of the Bright Wizard. In comes the Hunter of Champions. The front line's now very close to engaging once more. The spears actually decide to dive in. We've got these Marauders as well pushing in, while you can see we've got Wulfric diving in alongside the Shaman Sorcerer. Cascading Fire Cloak goes down on the Bright Wizard, so of course it brings with it Kindle Flame. We've got these Skin Wolves pushing in alongside these Norscan Warhounds as well, and these Skin Wolves decide to ignore the Bright Wizard, dive into the central clump over here, while the Norscan Warhounds decide to dive into the Bright Wizard instead. And take a look at the sheer amount of damage being done both to health and to morale. That Bright Wizard is giving up on the fight, routes more or less right away because of those beautiful maneuvers, the beautiful rear charges, and the rest of the Empire forces decide that they are not going to fight today. There is no faith, there is no steel, there is absolutely no gunpowder. The Norskans have won the day with a glorious bit of maneuvering at the end there, a beautiful flanking attack, absolutely shattering what's left of the Empire's forces. I've said it countless times before, and I'll say it again. Morale is the true health bar of a unit, and this battle really showcases how that can be leveraged right at the death. After his front line withered away, Orokabos knew that he had to fall back and get an encirclement or a flanking opportunity of some sort if he was going to come out on top, and so he manufactured these opportunities and took the victory. It seems the power of God and anime wasn't enough today. As always, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more Total War content and keep sending in those battle replays. I do think it's one of the best ways to learn, and it's always nice to highlight such amazing battles from the community. I'd also like to thank all of my patrons for supporting this channel every month. It makes an absolutely massive difference in keeping the channel alive. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.